Hi, everyone. The title of my talk is a 9-word proverb some of you may have seen before. Kind of remember, we're going to come back to it, including where the verb placement fits into it. But basically, the talk today is about life's experiences on the journey that we're all taking, some of us at earlier stages, some of us perhaps at later stages, some of the interests we make and some of the decisions we make down the line, which ultimately lead to career choices. We are going to be talking about you, because these choices and all affect who you are and what you are. But we're going to start a little bit talking about me, just to kind of put some perspective in it for you in that regard. So this is me when I went to Penn State. This is my graduation picture, and if you don't believe that's a Penn State graduation picture, it must be, because there's the old ID card I used to carry. Within a year and a half, I was a rookie police officer in Bensalem Township Police Department in Bucks County, PA. 11 years after that, I'm a rookie FBI agent at Quantico, just getting my orders to New York City. Throw in a graduate degree at Villanova University and one later at Georgetown University. And all of a sudden, I'm retired as a profiler, as a forensic linguist, but still doing work with those skills in terms of TV. I was a consulting producer on Criminal Minds. I also did a show, Killer Profile. You can see some of them here. Did a bunch of media interviews, still doing them. Did one today for Dutch TV, and always busy doing various kinds of issues relating to my FBI career. I've written 3 books so far, and I've even started a company, a consulting company, doing work there. But in the last few years, I found what I'm mostly known for, it seems, is this guy. He was a serial killer that plied his trade for 17 years in the US, keeping law enforcement and certainly the FBI very busy. And it came to the forefront in the last few years with this Discovery Channel miniseries, which is now on Netflix, 8 episodes to it, in which the actor Sam Worthington portrayed me in how the FBI did, in fact, finally identify and capture the Unabomber. In that particular case, I was involved with a particular letter that was written in the early 1970s to a magazine in which a certain odd-worded sentence was used, and I recognized it from somewhere, couldn't quite place it, but then I also saw a 35,000-word manifesto written by this person who wanted to get it published in the media with also that same oddly worded sentence. And after all those years, I finally got involved in this case looking for a guy that came to be known as the Unabomber. We'll come back to him in a bit. But as far as me, and as far as kind of the general topic of the talk today, what did I want to be when I grew up? And I wasn't sure. I went through high school. I even sat in some of the same seats you may be sitting in here at Penn State, scratching my head saying, I really don't know what I want to be. Or what I want to do. And people would ask me, and my typical response would be, yeah, I'm still not really sure, but I kind of know I don't want to get a job counting someone else's money. And somehow that was just an end-all for me. I kind of knew what I didn't want to do, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So, and actually I thought I invented that term. I thought I came up with that on my own because it was kind of important to me, and it's just something in my own mindset, it's just something I didn't think I wanted to do, until years later I saw a movie, and actually an old Disney movie, and from 1960, I saw it when I was a kid, and it is, in fact, Swiss Family Robinson. It's a movie about a family that gets marooned on a tropical island and full of exotic animals and beautiful blue waters and vistas. When occasionally pirates would show up too, they'd be fighting them off. It was a set of parents, 3 sons, and later a young woman castaway came on board onto the island. And in one of the scenes near the end, the oldest son and this young woman are having a discussion about if they ever get off the island, what kind of work would they want to do? And the discussion goes something like this. You can see what Roberta says. And then the Fritz character, not Fitz, but Fritz, responds that he doesn't want an office job counting someone else's money. And I remember watching this again just about 5 years ago and saying, that's where I got that line from. This Fritz character influenced me back when I was a young kid watching this Disney movie, never realizing that's subconsciously how it would all play out. So while its provenance was in fact lost on me, its importance wasn't. But we continue from there too. As I remember from my earliest years, my parents would talk about their crime of the century growing up in the early part of the 20th century, and that was the kidnapping of the young son of aviator Charles Lindbergh. It was the biggest case of the time. The early days of the FBI, they were involved in it, New Jersey State Police. It was the biggest investigation going on, looking for this young baby. All kinds of reward posters put out. There were notes passed back and forth. And the bottom line is, I asked my parents lots of questions about it, and my dad finally said, go read a book about it. They have them at the library. So my first grown-up book ever was, in fact, a book called Kidnapped by Joseph Waller. And I'm at 10 years of age and reading about this investigation. It just fascinated me. I couldn't stop turning the pages. I probably didn't do some homework that I should have been doing, but I was reading the book and enjoying it. And the part that I remember the most, even as I got older and before I got too much involved in my own criminal investigations and trying to solve them, is there were notes that went back and forth from the kidnapper to the Lindbergh family trying to arrange a money payment, whatever. The baby was actually dead already, so that's a whole other part of the story, but the man was still sending these ransom notes. And there was actually forensic linguistic analysis within within this investigation by people, and that part fascinated me more than anything. Wow, people can look at documents, at language, and figure out what happened before the term forensic linguistics was even invented, but here in all, that's what this case focused on. So it was very interesting that at 10 to 11 years of age, this case fascinated me, but then within a year or two, I found myself enjoying reading the newspaper. Philadelphia Evening Bulletin, long out of existence, but I would read the comics at first, then do the sports page, front page too, even as a young kid. And I would like to read about, they had a column called Answers to Queries. And if you wanted to know something about any aspect of life, you send them a letter. They may answer it in the paper itself, or you may get a letter sent to you. So what did I do? I sent a letter to the Evening Bulletin. It's like the equivalent of Google today, except it took weeks to get your response. And if you said, hey Siri today, it takes seconds to get your response. Back then it took weeks. So here is the letter that they sent back to me after I asked them, don't ask me why, I was curious about this, what's the longest word in the English language? It took a few weeks to get back to me. Here is the letter they sent, the actual copy of it, and here's just a summary of what the word is. 45-letter medical term. I'm sure it's been beaten by now by a longer word. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I've never used it in conversation in my life, but at 12 years of age, I liked having that information. I brought it to school, showed it to the teachers. They thought that was pretty cool too. So here I am at 12 years of age, and again, I'm not even consciously thinking of these things, but I'm already showing sort of an interest in criminal investigations. I'm showing an interest in language, and little did I know that someday, decades later, these would sort of come together and help me solve a pretty major case. I also enjoyed music back at the time, and back in the 60s, a lot of different genre, different singers. One of them was the Four Seasons. Here's a song, and yeah, I remember the title of this talk. Look at the end there, have my cake and eat it too. Okay, I remember those lyrics from back in the day. And guess who else sang a song with those lyrics in it? Yes, Bob Dylan. Lay, lay, lay. You can see the same term used there near the end of his song, or at least one of the stanzas. The Statler brothers, they kind of did a comical version of this song in which you can't have your cake and eateth too, clever twist on words, but the verb formation is kind of the same there if you notice. But again, growing up in life, it wasn't all just songs and newspapers and even reading books. I enjoyed word games. My mother got me into word games early on. Crosswords, Scrabble, cryptograms, and we would sometimes argue over who's going to do the crosswords that day. So a few degrees later, life continues on. Penn State, a few degrees after that, a job as a police officer, FBI, brand new profiler. Where do I find myself in 1995? My first case as a profiler, Unabomber, San Francisco, the Unabomber Task Force, UTF for short, looking for this guy who's been killing people for 17 years. He's already killed 3 people. He's already injured about 2 dozen. He almost brought down a commercial airliner. Luckily, he failed. And you know what? They had virtually no clues, no evidence at all on this guy. No fingerprints, no DNA, no hairs and fibers. This guy was so good, so careful. He was a genius. We knew it going in. But guess what? He liked to write. He liked to write a lot. And his magnum opus was the Manifesto, a 35,000-word anti-technology treatise, if you will, about everything evil since the Industrial Revolution in our world. And that's why he had to kill people. So I was tasked with helping to work this case and put it all together, which is what I did. I focused on the language, And I happen to find in the manifesto itself, paragraph 185, guess what I see? That proverb from those old songs I remember as a kid. Remember, nothing was easily looked up on Google back then. But look, the verbs are transposed. Eat and have it too. What's up with that? This guy, he's made a mistake where he made very few mistakes in his writings. And then I find a letter written by someone, we knew his name because he signed the bottom, to a letter to the editor, to a magazine. Look how he ends that particular letter. Again, that transposition of the verbs. We were onto something here. And we actually used these sentences along with a bunch of other linguistic features for the first time ever to get a search warrant in federal court using language and language alone to get into somebody's cabin. And that's what we eventually did. And here's just a comparison of the two sentences, how most of us say them, and how both Ted Kaczynski, living in this cabin, and the Unabomber wrote those same particular sentences. And it was this first time ever used in this particular case that language came together in a search warrant. And he was, of course, arrested. He pleaded guilty, and he's now serving time forever in a little cell in Florence, Colorado, in the Supermax. He's not sending bombs to anybody anymore. But coming back to you, I just want to leave you with the fact that you are what interests you, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have skills, if you have likes, if you have interests, no matter what stage of life you're in, even some older folks out there, you may be thinking of a second career in retirement, whatever, fall back, look back into your memory banks and look at what you enjoyed doing back in the day. And maybe you can get a certificate, you can get a degree, you can get some work experience in it, and maybe full-time, maybe part-time. You may even start at the bottom at first, whatever it may be, but you may wind up climbing that ladder someday and getting to where you want to be. In closing, someday, some of you may wind up solving a major criminal case in this country. You may invent a cure for a disease. You may be a lawyer. You may be a doctor. You may invent a widget of some sort. Whatever it is you want to be. Build something, tear something down, fix it, as long as someone's willing to pay you for it, and it's legal. You may even want to count someone else's money. That's okay if you want to do it. Nothing wrong with it at all. But just focus on the time that you are, when you're growing up, what you really liked, and this too can come to work for you. And I truly believe you can eat your cake and have it too. Or is it the other way around? I suppose it doesn't matter, or does it? Thanks, everybody.